we are going to start with this, and we're going to turn it into this. So let's get into creating this dark, moody look with all the different nodes you're seeing here in the node tree. So let's get started. Let's do what is now often called a dark mood color grade. Dark mood color grades quite often lean more towards blue-green. So, and also they are quite often desaturated. I am going to be doing this like on the fly. I am going to be making mistakes, going down the wrong path, coming back out, painting myself in a corner, having to undo things. But I'm going to explain why I am making certain choices and why in that particular situation something mightn't work. I'm going to edit it to take out parts. Maybe something has to be calculated, or I think on the back end here, when I start to add textures such as not green as much, but such as like halations or focus racks and different kind of effects that I have in mind I would like to use. And I know I'm going to be tweaking those and it's going to take a while to get there, but I'm going to try to leave in the parts where you can really see like, oh, okay, I can see where that's going. So let's get started. This node tree might look a bit intimidating, but it's not. All my node trees always having these nodes: balance, exposure, contrast, saturation, and trim. Trim is like after I set this up, I treat this more like as if this is my virtual camera. I don't do no contrast with a curve in here. Let me go to this. I don't use contrast with a curve. That's one thing. I use it just with a straight, let's see here, contrast, and setting the pivot at the 0336. Setting the pivot at the pivot point that's for this color space, and the color space I'm using is DaVinci Wide Gamut. The reason why I'm doing that is that because it allows me to easier match two shots together if I have something that is just truly a value instead of me having here and then here. How do you recreate that in the next shot? You know, like that can become a bit tricky. So that type of thing I would more use on the back end back here, where then I'm creating more of a look. So in that way, I like to make this first part repeatable, let's say, you know, like easier to translate into another shot. So let's reset that. By the way, this looks pretty nice. This funny looking contrast that I just added there. That's sometimes you get these like happy accidents. Let me just grab that and throw that in there just for good keeping and come back and experiment with that. But that's just how color grading goes. You know, you by accident discover things. But yeah, let's go. Let's reset that. Okay, so balance. I think everyone by now knows balance. The reason I always explain these things over and over and over again, because I don't know if the person who is watching this video is for the first time seeing this as my first video. So I like to go in and just run through these basic nodes and then move on from there. So balance, we're just gonna see if it's going to make a difference. When I look at a shot, this is what it originally is. You can see like a green cast. The water has some green in it. Her shirt hasn't a bit green. When you look at the trace, you can see it's over to yellow green. So that might tell you, hey, this thing might be balanced. And you can see the middle isn't sitting going over the middle of this. It's more on this side. So in that way, we can start to experiment with just pulling, trying to see what happens when we, let's see here, reset that, move this a bit. What happens when we move it over a bit? Let's wait, it isn't reacting as yet. Resolve is thinking about it. Let's see, did I oh, I turned off. Yeah, sometimes this has turned off the updating in the screen. So the bypass was on. So let me reset that, because I noticed it was changing here, but I wasn't seeing it here. So that's why, like, hey, what's going on here? So it's up there. Yeah, so let's see to pull that trace over more balanced. Now, as I do this, so you can see it's there. It has some green still in the wood. I reset that. You can see here, you can see a lot of the green. So it's more like pull it away from the green a bit and then I can see it's kind of bluish. You could go up a bit to see what happens slightly. Let's pull that down a bit. Let's go over. So I like to go, what I like to do is like horizontal, vertical, horizontal, so it's like a stepping, and that helps me. We can do even down here. That helps me gauge more easily where I am going. Yeah, and we keep looking at the wood as it is the object that seems to have the least amount of color. So it's more neutral, more gray. Our eyes are very sensitive to light, but less so with color. So we don't see color changes easily. That's just how our human eyes work. So I could just switch it on and off. So Command D on the Mac. And as you can see, you really notice, hey, there was a lot of green in the shot. So now we kind of balance that out. Let's go in a bit closer. The reason why I want to go in a bit closer as soon as I can see her skin, you see, as human beings, we are more sensitive to skin being off than anything else. So me not having been here while this was shot, I have a good idea how the tint of a skin would be. So not only am I looking at something that's more neutral, I'm also looking at the skin. If I look at the skin, it still does look a little magenta-ish. So if I wanted to, I could, let me see if I bring this more down from magenta, a little down from magenta, a little over more to the blue. So let's see, on and off. Yeah, so that this looks like this also get neutralized, also take out that tint that was in there. And you notice the lake also gone from a greenish tint to a more like a reflection of the sky. It's more bluish. That makes more sense to me, that this would be ending up reflecting in the lake. And if you look like that, the sky isn't green. So how are we getting a green, you know, reflection? And the sky also looks a bit green. So now we take that out so that we reach there. So that's kind of like how you can, even though you don't have something to white balance on, you just start to use your quote unquote common sense. You look at things that you think could be gray. You look at skin, you look at wood that looks washed out. That thing shouldn't have then a tint on it, and little hints from sky to water, etc., etc. So that's how we got a first balance. Second, exposure. Why do I have exposure before the contrast? Because increasing exposure does a type of contrasting in and of itself. And you don't want that. You're going to set the contrast, which changes the difference between the brightest and the darkest, and then trying to set exposure, which then adjusts your contrast. Because sometimes you can just do a little exposure change and get the contrast that you want. But at the same time, you can say, okay, I now have my exposure correctly. I like where it is, but I would like there to be more contrast in the image. And being that I'm in the DaVinci Resolve wide gamut color space, I put it to 0.336 because that's middle gray in this color space. And then I can touch. Let's go over to something that better represents the contrast. Then I touch the contrast. You see, it's there. Now, I can go and I can set a contrast perfect as the way how I would want it to be. But what then happens is I don't have any room to play with any other objects further down the line. So what I would advise, or at least what I do, I set it to almost where I want it to be. I like, this is perfect. Let's pull back so we have some room to play, and also see if I could get texture back into the darkest areas. If I look at it, let's zoom into here so we can at least see, is there any texture? Or one thing, I am working on compressed footage, .mpeg4 footage. So there are blocks in here, compression blocks. But I like to use compressed footage because it isn't an ideal. And why I say that is that sometimes you might get something from clients that isn't the ideal quality where you need to do your work, but the best that you can do. Sure, I can go and I can grab some footage from Blackmagic Design or some red footage to do it, but that is so perfect that I think it's best to show the color grading and examples on footage that's not so much as worst case scenario, but is hard, and then so that when you get something that is quote unquote easy, it becomes ways more easier. Because I know so many times I've seen tutorials where they had just the perfect footage with no noise and no issues, And then I go and I try on something that isn't as ideal as them, and I can't achieve the end goal. So that's why I oftentimes am using compressed footage. What I want to say is I'm also going to show you things to deal with this kind of macro block compression issues when you are selecting skin, etc. So that's why I'm also leaving that in there. So it could be more real world color grading. So let's continue. Where was I? Oh yeah, leaving the room and checking to see if there's any how to say now, any texture to be had, any detail in the black part there, and I don't see anything, any design things in there. So I know from that point of view, pressing Z to get all screen, from that point of view, I know where the exposure should be and be okay. So I have it a little off of being it like not so much as crushed, but really dark. You can see down here where it is, because I want to have still some room further down the line. Now, why am I having saturation after contrast? Saturation after contrast is important because as you stretch out the colors over a longer distance, it becomes less saturated. So you don't want to first, and I've seen people have it the opposite way around, but if I go and I saturate something to the perfect point where I want it, and then I change the contrast, I'm then changing the perceived saturation. So what I want is I want to set the contrast exactly where I want it to be, and then layer on some colors on top of that to compensate or to compensate for the lack of color, or to unsaturate the image if it became too saturated, because maybe I pull, let's see here, 0.850. So if I pull it down and I start to get more colors in the image where I don't want it to be as saturated, I can go back here and I can pull down the saturation if I think necessary, you see? So it's kind of, I think it's not so much as chicken before the egg, but the understanding of what contrast can do. Whereas, and here's a crazy, so exposure can give me contrast or reduce my contrast. So then I have a contrast afterward to help compensate for that. But then contrast on itself does a perceived saturation, where then I evaluate it with a saturation node thereafter. So let me put this back to 0.850. And I want you to also understand too, this is a particular workflow. So you can have someone who's going to have a different way of doing it and still get to the same end result. And that you can think of in the same way as when you look at someone writing a sentence. Someone can't just come to you and say, hey, this is the perfect way to write a sentence. You have to look at each one of these things as words in a sentence. But the little difference with this little part is from a technical point of view, what happens, so you can have that you're chasing your tail if you have it the opposite way around, where that the contrast constantly throwing off the saturation that you set. So in that way, I say, hey, do it this way, and that's going to get you the least amount of headache, because even if you have it twisted around, yeah, you can recompensate every time, but it's going to cost you more work because of how technically it will interact with each other. And everything from a color grade standpoint of view, I think most things is fair game to have it in whichever order you want. Once you know how to correct any issues that are going to come from the order that you've chosen. But I don't think with color grading, the creative process, do you have to kill yourself with maintaining a certain order of things. And I say that immediately, let me say something, is at times what I like to do is I like to just color grade and focus on the environment. And after I finish fixing the environment, go back and put the skin in the right place, because the skin operates in a very narrow place where we call it's okay. Whereas the environment, we can swing the environment all over the place and it doesn't look or feel strange because it's a creative choice. But in that creative choice, the skin only can exist in a certain small part of looking good. You understand? So I hope that helps. The reason I'm going into all this kind of detail, normally I would already get into the color grade, is because in this situation, we are going to create an environment that is not so friendly to the skin in terms of the dark mode. We want the skin to look correct, but this dark, moody, color grade is going to have the skin not in the right place. It isn't ideal for the look of a skin. So that's why I have all these kind of discussions with you. Okay, trim. Now trim, I think I explained that in the beginning. Trim is where I will touch the exposure, I would touch everything that is available here. I would put here to bring me into the right place where I think is proper to feed the rest of the grade. This is like the last stop that is allowed to have saturation, contrast, everything mixed up in one node, and it's there to a kind of a catch-all. And I think of it more of like if we are shot matching and I think I have my shot good and I go to another shot and something is off, maybe I could just go in here and tweak one little thing instead of tweaking tweaking balance that's sitting under exposure, tweaking contrast that's sitting under saturation, you know? So here maybe it's like I use it as if it came in the way this gives it, presents it here, and then I make a little tweak here that brings it in place. It's kind of a little tweak, a little last fixer-upper. And here I have another trim that does the same thing where if this all comes together in a certain way and I want to speak to that look that's here, look or adjustment in one single way, that's where I throw in the trim, and then that feeds on further of the color grade. I hope that little introduction helps you, because in other tutorials I don't really go into it like that, but I figure, hey, let me do that because of this dark mode that I am about to do. Okay, let's see. Yeah, so now we're here. Now, what am I using these nodes for? These nodes are for separation of things in the scene. So for instance, if I'm just going to do a dirty version of it. So say for instance, I wanted to, let's get that active. Let's see down here, power window. Why is that not becoming active? Yeah. So for instance, that would be something that we would use to separate different things inside of the shot. So for instance, this, and we say, you know what? I don't like how bright that is. We bring that down because we're like, yeah, maybe that's affecting the shot too much. And then the next thing could be specifically on her. The next thing could be the sky, you know, so each one of these would then be the separations that we are going to do to make it look the way that we think it should look and meld together. So that's what I would use that first part for. Next thing. Here's the trim that I already explained. And here is where I would be messing around with the first kind of look development. In these nodes I would be doing that. Here I can have like split toning, real creative color grades, and here is where I would really start to build the dark mood look, etc. So here's per se to get things balanced in and mixed in with each other properly. Bring down the sky, make the sky more blue or less magenta, etc. And here's where we're going to creating the look itself. And back here is what often is called, here's you creating the textures like halations. These are things that are more suited to be serial because one feeds into the next. And they add on top of each other in a friendly way, which I will be showing you some of those things and you're going to get the point. And I'm going to reiterate again. This is just one workflow, a certain way of doing it. You know, so other people are going to do it differently. You can also do it differently, but I'm explaining you the why I am doing it in this specific situation. Okay, so let's start doing exactly what we were talking about. Let's reset this. Reset, great. Okay, one of the key things, as I mentioned, I am going to focus just on the look more than focus on the skin when we get back here, and then I'm gonna come back to here and then straighten out the skin. So I'm gonna do the look, and then I'll come back and then do the skin afterwards. So let's start by my basic thing. What I like to do is I know I want her to be in focus and I want her to stand out. My thing with standing out is I quite often like to darken the environment instead of brightening the person. If I think I already have the exposure in the right place, I would start to darken the shot a bit so she stands out. I think I would like a little more contrast from beforehand. Let's see. Get a little more contrast in there as a nicer starting point. I like that. I'll come back here. I still have some room to do more contrasting, but it's just, I think this is a better starting point. Let me do this. And then what I like to do on top of that, we can do, let me do a before and after so you can see. What I like to do too is I like to set a window that's just focused on the person's head. So we have, let me M to set a marker. So I have a, this is my hero shot I always could get back to. Just shift and up, and I can always get back to this specific shot of frame, I should say. Now here, what I'm gonna do is, one, this was to darken everything around her specific, and this here is gonna darken everything around her head, including what was already darkened. So we would then do this. Let's see, oh, I'm doing it wrong. I have to do the outside. So now everything is still getting pushed down even more, and her head is gonna stand out more. So it's a layered approach to fixing up the body in the shot. Okay, so what I would like to do to make her even stand out more, oh, let me do something a little different. Let's go up to, let's see here. Let's get the sky. Let's see where that sky sits. Let me do, see if it's cyanish. It's bluish. I'm not seeing much of an effect there. Let me see something. Let's put up a window at the top. Should I do, try it out like this? Wait, let me take a look at what happens in the shot. Let's see, this is the most that we're gonna see that. So let's go here, 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 and here. Okay. Now let's see, hold our fingers and see if we are going to get it to stay in place. Okay. Now let's go to our hero shot. Let's go to the hero shot. Oh, let's go to hero shot, and let me see if I'm on the right one. I'm on the balance. Wait a minute. Come back to here. Yep. So let's see here. This, let's see what happens. Let's go vector because we're dealing with colors. Okay, carry that up. No. Let's get that down to there a bit. Get it more blue. So let's do a before and an after. So now we're getting that blue because remember, these dark mode shots or scenes are more blue, blue greenish. So getting things in the right starting point helps a lot down the line. Okay, so we have that. Now, that looks good. Now you can see her hat is causing an issue. So with that, we can go and do this. And one little thing, we aren't going to be doing things perfectly because it's just a tutorial, but I just want you to get the idea of how it would be done. Let's move this up, that out, that out. And this, what this is going to do is it's going to function as a cutout for that thing up there. So first I'm just going to track it, and then I'm going to resize it to make it smaller. So let's do hat. This is hat. Oh, to be able to add text to here, you must have it selected and then you can double click. If you don't have it selected, you can't just start to write now. You can't just start to write without first you having the thing selected. So that's a key. Let's take a track now. Let's go with hat, and we're gonna track it back and forward. That did not work out, so we can stop that. Let's go back to here. Let's reset that. Let's undo that. Let's go back to where it was correct. Okay, now let's grab this. Let's go back to there. Let's see if I want to do a little experimenting here. Let's reset this, move this to here. Okay, I'm gonna do it now frame by frame because I saw just now the automatic track wasn't holding it. I'm over into frame. So what that does is now I'm gonna add a keyframe to represent where it is now. I'm gonna move a bit all the way to here. It changed drastically in size, but at this point it isn't needed. So let's look for the last place where it's needed. It's needed about here. So we're gonna move this to here. And I'm gonna take it off a frame. I'm gonna change its size because now it's gonna be this size through the entire thing. Let's bring this down a bit. Pull this over and move back to frame. Let's see what happens. Okay, it comes up to there. We need to make the size a bit different, change it a bit. Okay, slightly inside. Let's zoom into this a bit more. Slightly inside because I'm gonna soften this once I'm done. So it's there. And it's out, it's there. Okay, let's move back a bit to here. Move this down. Let's move this a bit here. Oh, this a bit down. This over a bit. It's more about what's happening here than down here. I don't really care what's happening there because this is just going to function as a cutout. We go to here, inside a bit. Let's shorten this. Yep, right there. Okay, it's inside there. And move that. Okay, doesn't have to be exact science. So from here, let's see, yeah, there, we don't need it anymore. Let's bring that out. At that point, it could be completely off screen because I don't need it anymore. And there, completely off screen. Let me double check something, I think. Yep. Yep. So from there we need it and there we don't. So that's why I just pull off the screen, it doesn't matter. So what we need to do is it has to cut into this. So let's take a look here. This is what we have now. It's included. Let me do Shift H, and you do that with up here. What we needed to do is we need this to be black. So when we go in here, we say flip it. So that's including, and this is saying to subtract. This one here says subtract it from there. So this blue, let me go up to here and take it out of this mode. What's happening now is that the blue that we're doing there, let me do an extreme for you. Let me see if I'm on the right node. Yes, that doesn't affect the hat. Let's take off, see? And what we do on top of that, let me undo this so we have the right color. What we do on top of that is we want to soften this on the outside and on, oh, let me turn that on the outside and on the inside so that they blend together. And what happens is that when it is used, you don't see that blend because they, you know, it's edges. So you have this kind of, in real world, the color would wrap around it. So me having chosen to have it slightly on the inside is where then we can have this blend happening, going from outside, inside, and not hard on the edge. And as you can see, you don't really see anything here. So if I go to this and I was to switch it there, you can see it like that. But when it's something as subtle as we were doing, you don't really see it. Then you can kill yourself to get it perfect. But if it doesn't matter in the context of what you're doing as a small shot, doesn't be a problem. But as a tutorial right now, I'm not going to go and refine it perfectly, but you get the idea. Okay, so now we have that finished. So this is where I'm saying we are doing a separation of things. So if I wanted to, I can bring down the exposure of the sky a bit. Yeah, that area. And then add do sky and then feather it out. Inside, outside. So it's now feathered out. So that out there in the distance, you don't even notice that. You don't see how it is feathered out because we give it a broad enough feather. And when you're doing small little adjustments, they don't show up until you do something major, and you can get away with quite a bit. Let's undo that. You can get away with quite a bit if you don't do nothing too extreme. And if we needed to, we can, you know, bring it up and touch it up perfectly. Okay. That being said, if we look at this, I think we have a pretty good spot. Now, if I want to, there's two things. I can either put a mask by going and clicking and drawing a mask, or I can do a, let me see here, not the sat. I can change the, either can go from the point of, from the light to hit the brightest thing to bring down its exposure. Let's go over to here, waveform, or parade. I can either say I want to bring down the exposure of the brightest thing in my shot and then boost back up the shadows to compensate for what I'm bringing down, the brightest thing. So I'm affecting the brightest thing. I can do it from in here. Let me reset this. Can go 1 over to check if we touch in highlights only. So highlights is going to hit these things up here. You see? And the sky is also getting hit. But we can also, if we wanted to, we can draw a mask. Now, things with trees and so forth, I would more want to go in this direction of the selections, right? So let's reset this. And also you have the option to come over here in the log wheel and also do a based on the highlights, which then, let me see here. It isn't reacting yet. Yeah, it's swinging. So then that's really your separate, the log wheel is more separated than the, let me put this at 0.366. So the log wheel is even more dissected, as you can see there. See, even more smaller. But what I want to do, let me try something. Let's see here. Let's take a look here. LumaSat. What should I do? What we can do is we select this to see how bright and how far up it is. And then we can bring down just the brightest, affecting the sky. So let's undo that. Let's also select the sky, and let's also select the trees. So now we know where the sky goes from, and we know where the trees are. If I say where she is, so now we have 3 points that tells us where what is. We have, let me see here, one seemed to have disappeared. Let me see this. Oh yeah, so now we know where she's at, where the woman is at. Oh, where the woman is at. We know where the trees is at, but just now we had there the sky and it disappeared. Let's see to do it over. That is the sky. That is the trees. And that is her. So now we have the option to say we are going to move the trees, the brightness of the trees. See, we're touching more of the trees and the sky itself staying more anchored. So as we bring this down, and then we can compensate a little bit back up for her, and we can turn and say we want the sky a little bit back up. It's a funny looking curve, I'm not gonna lie, but I am doing it more of a like from a functional point of view. So let's turn that off, turn it on, turn it off, turn it on. It's off, it's on. So that is only affecting over there, the trees. So let's see here, that's her, so it's more there. So we're just pulling down the trees, and we can say, let's move this a bit more. Yeah, so let's see, on and off. So the effect is more happening in the trees than touching the sky, but you get the idea. Now, that's one way of doing it. What we could do, we can try something else. We can go over into, let me see here, where to go? Could we, no, let's do it. Let's do it. Let's see here. Let's touch this. So now what we've done in essence, we have selected this range. You see, now the tree is selected. What we want to do is I just want to deal with a certain luminance, see if that's what we're going for. No, we want to do this, that. Okay, so now we'll be affecting over there only. Let's open up the soft low. And if you want, we can put a mask here that cuts off. I'm gonna show you that in a moment. But now we have the option to go over and change the exposure of only that selected bit. And let's turn this off. Turn off the highlight mode. So now what we're doing is we just only affecting the trees and the exposure there. I think this is a better way to do it than with a mask, which then you wouldn't get the edges exactly. And this way you have a better control of the area in which that brightness, that very specific brightness happens, because we have a certain luminance range we chose, we have the saturation levels that we choose, and we also have the hue, which color that we are trying to hit, which then helps it to navigate closer into that area. Now what I want to do, this is pre-filter, matte finesse. This is the matte, because we created a matte. What pre-filter does, it smoothens out the selection so that this then is able to better make a better selection down the line. Let me show you what I mean by it. When you increase the filter, you can see, if you look at here, and you can also look over here, but look more into, let me get closer. the selection, it helps the selection more to deal with the blockiness that you would get in compressed footage. So clean black is on the outside of everything that you wanted to select, and it then goes and erodes into your selected area, but it cleans up all these kind of little extra stuff that you didn't have as an intention, you see? But if you go too far, it starts to chew into your selection. So you have to be just mindful of that, a balance. The white clean, it says what is selected, I want to expand out a bit more and fill in the gaps. That's what it actually does, fill in the gaps inside of your selection. So let me let you see that, you see? So we get less holes. And I don't have to explain much about blur. That makes it more smoother. Now you have black clip, white clip, in and out ratio. The black clip, what that does is that it looks at things that are gray and turns them more to the black direction. So things that were kind of transparent becomes less transparent. So that's another kind of sharpening of your image itself or the selection itself. And the white clip does the opposite naturally. In and out ratio is just to say, based on how I understand it, it is saying where it will lean into for the matte. Where will it, I think it's best visual. If you look at it visually, you can see who gets more precedence with the selected matte. I basically never just touch this. I just mess with mostly these three things and sometimes the pre-filter. So let's go back out. So now we have this. We have a place that we can do a good changing the exposure. Go back up. See, now we've gone too far because we was doing it in an isolated way. So if we do, let's turn it off, on. See, it doesn't really match the environment. And let's then reset this so we could try to figure out where did we go wrong. Yeah, let's see here. Okay, undo this one, that one, that one. Okay, I think where our mess up comes with, we went a bit too far with the exposure change. I think clean black a little bit, clean white a little bit, and the blur radius. Let's see if this works. Okay, let's see here. Okay, the edge of this thing seems to be very coarse. And I think, let's turn this on and off. Yeah, so I can see this black ridging makes me think it's the clean black that's the issue. Oh no, yeah. So now it blends better with each other. Let's look. Now, you can see the issues that's happening inside of this selection. Let's see what the black does. Okay. Blur. Yep, okay. Let's see if this then works. Yeah, that works much better. Okay. Naturally we could keep going and finessing it, but it gives you an idea. So now so far we come from this to this, and this starting to get us in the realm of what oftentimes is in that dark and moody shot look. So we are getting there. This was really something I think would cause you a lot of struggle to try to be in the, how to say now, the dark mode. And also I think it's something that we can desaturate, because let's go down a bit. That's going to be one of the key things in the look. So now we have this, right? And that fits more in the direction. So as I said, this is used to do these kind of carving of the shot. And I think we have all that we need to have so far. Yeah, I think we have what we need to have. So now here is, for instance, the trim. If we wanted to, here we can do a complete movement of everything in any direction we need it to go. Let's go here, for instance. So you see, so it's now that's where the trim comes in. We can do what we need to do to continue on the line of the look. Okay, this one here I'm going to use for skin. We're going to come back to that in a moment. But now what we want to do is work on the look. So one of the key things with the dark mode, as I said, is quite often to be more blue-green. So what we want to do is create, let's balance this more over to there. Yeah, and let's see here with, let me see here. Let's go down a bit. Let's check something. The whole thing there. We ain't worrying with the skin for now. And we want, let us get a DCTL. Go into effects, grab a split tone, and in this split tone, display curve, I know where I want my shadows to be. And so first I'm gonna up the existence, and then I have my shadows already in a blue-green situation. And here, her skin, not so much her skin, but her herself, where do we want the neutral part? How broad do we want the neutral part? And where we want the neutral part. So we can say, where is she? I'm looking at her skin as a kind of reference for me to know where her exposure sits in this entire thing. So if you look, you can see when her skin is getting, let me turn this one off. So if you look, you can see where her skin is getting affected or not. So it's about there. We're going to fix the skin better, but we know at least up to here is where we can say her skin sits somewhere in between there, because of where the pivot point is starting to touch her skin or it isn't touching her skin. You see the yellow coming in. So I think it's about there. Now, what we do is we want, let's bring this down. So we've gone from this to this. And what I want now, I have another, let me see here, and we can bring this down a little, just a little bit, see how much is enough. And let me see, and then there's another split tone I like to use. It's really focused on the contrast aspect. Or I can use, let me see here, let's do multigrade, a contrast. Let's see where this contrast takes me. That takes me to there. That contrast looks lovely. Let's do this. So now we get into that. And now I want to bring down the saturation a bit, because it isn't a really saturated look. This saturation is pretty heavy-handed when you move it. So let's move it to there. So you have to be a bit careful with that saturation. So you can see we're getting to the right spot. Now if I go back to the contrast, let's lower that contrast a little bit. Let's see what that looks like. Swing it a bit. I think that's good. So 1.2, let's remove the display. So now we're going from this to this. You see, we're getting there piece by piece. And when we separated and brought down this, it gave us less of a fight that we had to do with this piece over here. So we are getting there piece by piece. And you see our hat thing fixed it. And so that's how you start to create these grades. So here is where we do, let me see how this affects it still. Do I want this? Let me see. You know what? I have an idea. Let's take it down a bit. Yep. And then I am going to, let's do a little experimenting. I don't see people oftentimes messing with blend modes, but I think they are pretty a fun thing to mess with. I'm going to hit the multiply and it's going to go really dark. And then what I'm going to do is I am going to, let me see something. Let's try bringing up the exposure. And let's, okay, let's do this, or let's reset that. And let's go and change how much effect it is having on the overall image. So let's bring this to there. Yep, this is starting to look pretty nice. Yeah, so now we have this going on. And remember, that's why we left a little room for the contrast back here. So we had things to play with once we reach forward. Let's see what a parade is saying. Okay, now, if we're like, things are too dark, but I like the look, in the next node, what we can do is move these dark points up. So for instance, I can click here so I know where that sits. I can carry this up a bit, right? And I can, that's something strange. You notice I clicked it and now it's gone again. So let's reset that. I clicked it, I created a point, and what? No, I ain't supposed to do that. Okay, let's click it again. I'll click it again. Oh, I know what I did. I misinterpreted. It did its job correctly. Let's go one little higher, slightly up, so I know, because I like where this is. I would like this to stay the same. And then we move the darkest parts up a bit, and then we gives it that, and we move this up a bit and hold the Alt, and you can shift it down. Move that down a little bit, and I think this now gives it that look, a little raised. The black sizzle just a bit raised, not completely crushed. Okay, so now let me see. This is the lift. Okay, so now we have the lift. What this is the contrast. This is a split tone, and this is mult. See, the mult does that to it. So now we start to create this really unique look that is in a dark mode style. Now what we are doing is going through piece by piece, and whether it is correcting or adding to the look that we already created back here, or the adjustments we hear, and we're just going through and doing it. It's taking me a bit long to explain it, but I am explaining it in a way so that you can apply it to something else that you're gonna do. Now, from this point, let's go and we fix the skin issue. Let's go back here. Now, we don't see her face that much. We can see it there. Let's zoom in really. Now her face, for the color that is in this environment, it is kind of okay, but we like skin to look like skin, because here it looks a little purplish and I don't like that. So what we can do, remember this here, this is getting, I just press Shift H to go into highlight mode. So whatever node you have selected, it shows you what it sees. So this node is getting a very clean skin coming in. So it's quite easy for me to go in and change things in the skin. So we can up the saturation in the skin, but here's the kicker. And I want to turn this off for a moment. As you saw, that blockishness comes from the compression from the MPEG. Good that we having this issue. Here's what I want to do with it. What we're seeing is that it isn't getting a clean enough signal for it to know where the skin tone is due to the blockiness, the compression, the macro blocks. That's what you call this. So what we do, one, red and the skin, they're sitting right next to each other. What we can do, we do two things. You can either also, and I would advise that whenever you're trying to fix the skin, don't just only move the skin selector. You got to move the red next to it. That helps too, because they're up against each other. Your skin is red and this specific tone that it is choosing as skin. Two, what I've also come to notice, if I reset that, if we change what is being seen as skin, let me see if it grabs it. As you notice, it's grabbing more of the area because it's shifting this. If you look at this little line, you can see it here too. As it shifts over, it also adjusts what the red is interpreted to. And I've noticed that when I shift more over to the left, I grab more of what is seen as skin, and I can then also up the skin. Now, I'm going to come back to that blotchiness in a moment. Let me see here. Turn off the highlight. So now we have the skin coming back. I want to zoom out. Now, notice over her shoulder, over her shoulder here, you can see it's affecting also the rest of the image, which we don't want. And guess what? We just slam a power window over this so we can limit where it happens. In this situation, when you have, and I'm not going to use this way of doing it, in this situation, when you have these things so close to each other, for you to go to create a, how you say now, one of these, a power window with her nose and her face turning. These are things where I'm like, this is good when you can see if you can figure out procedurally how to select that skin instead of going in there with drying masks and so forth. And her skin down here is also affected, but the sweater is also being affected. So how do we fix that? Now, what we can do, let's reset this all together. We go over to the magic mask. The magic mask says that is skin. Let's turn on, let me undo that. Let's turn on the red. And let me see here. Now, what we're going to say is, let's turn on better, the highest quality. We're going to say this is what we want to look at, and we want to look at that. I think that's a much better way to approach now adjusting the skin in such a difficult way. True, we hit the glasses, but we can also come back in here and say, we can come back here and say that is not part of the selection. So now look at that. Look what we have now to deal with. We aren't hitting the reflections there, and if so needed, let me turn this off for a moment, we can do whatever we want to do to that skin. You see? So I think that's the better route to go in using the magic mask to select the skin in such a situation. Right above her face has the same colors. There's reflections. She's turning, all of that goodness. But once we're doing the magic mask, we also have to keep tweaking it because her face is going to go out of shot. We have to bear that in mind and also fix that issue when it shows up. So let's do that right now. Let's see if it's going to be able to do what we want it to do. So it has finished. Let's see what it has done. As you notice on the turn, her face isn't in the shot, or it isn't grabbing it. Now, what we can do is, let's check here. Let's go, you see here, go to the reference frame, and we then take out, let's do it like this, take out that. Let's zoom in, let's see if that's gonna grab it. Take out also that, and that. Okay, so now we have those things taken out. We have to redo the calculation, and that's going to take a while, and then I'm going to come back. Let's do that again, and I'll come back when that is finished. So I paused the video for a moment so I can go and I can experiment for a bit to come back to you guys. To my surprise, this took ways longer than I thought to get this skin properly. So here's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna explain what I did, but it is so tedious that I think if you want me to do a tutorial only on getting this skin correctly and what all I did with, not just, let me see here, not just with the magic mask, not just with splitting it out into the face alone and the back and using the different tools here and how they work, I think it would be interesting. But being that this is just about a dark mode, I think I should save that for something else if someone wants to see that, but I'm going to explain you what I did. So one of the key things that is a bit tricky with using the magic mask is if you go and you select something new, what it does is let me version up so that just in case, let me do it via great versions. No, let me do it just the normal way. Clips, right click, version, create new version 2. Okay, so that bottom version is safe. Need that save. Okay, so I think what I'm about to explain is very, very important to know. So because of how this tool works is that when you make a new click, it makes you re-render everything. It doesn't say, okay, the stuff that I had before, I don't need to do. No, it says everything that you had is now invalid and I have to do a rescan of all the layers. So what I decided to do is to set one up for the back and set one up for the face only. And as this moves, she turns, it goes, and then it comes back on the opposite side. Now, it looks simple, but it was a headache. And there were two things that was going on. Remember I told you I like to do my tutorial with compressed footage, something difficult so that when people are doing it on pristine footage, that it works. But you need to be able to also do it on badly compressed footage, let's say. You know, you have to figure out, you have to like re-wall of how do I solve that issue instead of me just giving you a polished version. So one of the key things with this is it has a lot of compression artifacts in it, right? Now, so one of the things at the distance at where it's at, I wasn't too, concerned with the little thing, like you can see the nose there. So what I did is, let me go to here, that's the skin on the back, this is the face. So first thing I did is I simply, I'm gonna mess this up. Let me see, how do I best do it? Yeah. So first thing I did, I click and I selected the face. And let me do it because I can always go back to version 1. I think you should see it. Okay, this is face, and let me zoom out and let me clear out the back. I really think this is important for you guys to see. Remember, totally, these here were me splitting out the different layers. Let me go and do this. Okay. So with these different layers, you have all these different corrections on their own. Oh, a little gotcha. So whenever you're working with the magic mask and you're on this palette, as soon as you turn this sucker on, it messes up, not say mess up, it causes it to focus on that node only. So you might be wondering, hey, what the hell is going on? It's this. So as soon as you select it on any node, it keeps doing that. And a similar way that this also happens is when you go into highlight mode. Highlight mode also does the same thing. You're selecting, you see, and that node then becomes the only node that is shown. So that's a kind of a gotcha that you need to know with a magic mask. I could turn this on, off, and everything works the way you would expect it. Okay, let me turn on the magic mask. So on top of this skin back, what I had noticed, as much as you see here, you got a better. The thing what happens when you select the better, let me go in a bit. If I select better and I have on the overlay, you click it, it creates this kind of, let's say soft edges, right? And it blends off into the shirt or the sweater. And your natural thought would be how choose that one and that the best one. No, but in this case, what was better is for me to choose the faster, and then you use the faster to do the tweaking that you think, let me put this there, the tweaking that you think is necessary to fix the matte. So you would get clean black, clean whites. Let me explain. This is shrink. Let me grow it out a little. Whoa. Let me see if it would do it a little bit. No, that's too much. But use the mattes to make any changes that you need, because it was more exact than what you saw with the other one. But the thing is that being that it was at this distance, and another thing too is it's because it's also a color change, because our eyes are very sensitive to light more so than color. You could get away with changing the color and your eye wouldn't notice the edges as much, as more as if this was about changing the exposure, then that would have really been a problem, because you would have quickly seen an edge. But being that it's color, it just blends in with each other, so you don't really see it, so you could get away with a lot. So I chose faster. And then with faster, I did back and forth. And that went pretty smooth. That was very straightforward, because at all times, you could see her back in the shot. That went pretty good. The reason, as I said, I split it out is because if I went and I selected then the face on the same node, it would then go and recalculate the back and recalculate the face. And then when she switched over and I had to do other work, when I clicked there to make other changes, it would then throw away everything that was already done. And then it would try to recalculate everything over. So I figured, let me split them up. So I split it into two. One was on face and one was on the back. Okay, that was the first thing I did. Secondly, how did I approach the face? Now with the face, when she turns, face gone for a while and then she comes back. What I noticed is if I use the same thing once again with the better, if I use the better and let me turn this on. If I use better and I clicked, it created more of a blurred edge. Same with the lower back. You see it's all in between there and up there and so forth. It was more wild. And it wasn't holding as well, to my surprise, but it could be because of the size of the object. But faster just did that. So then it was tighter on top of the image. And what I would do is I would then track this. Oh, let me reset this and go to here and let me click there. Oh, wait, let me reset this completely. Yeah, so I would select this. And then what I would do is track back and forward. and then I would go after the fact, these two tools, or this tool here, this is going to work on a frame by frame level. So then I had to go through frame by frame and paint it in. And where places where it wasn't supposed to be, then I would be painting it out with these two. So the feathers of, the brush tool. And then I would use the size to determine of how tight I want it to be or not. So for instance, in this case, the plus, I can come up here. If I hold the command and I drag, I can also on screen change the size, go up to here, wipe in, but then I could zoom in better. So the brush becomes more effective. And what I found is I would just wipe over this part and then hold the Alt and then just draw one line through it. That was quicker than, doing. So I had to go frame by frame doing this where it wasn't filling in properly and when her head is turning. What did work out pretty well though is, let me zoom out. It did pick up when she turned her head. To my surprise, it did pick up the opposite side automatically, which was quite impressive. So then I just had I had less cleanup to do, but it did work. And just to recap, the reason why I was doing that is, let me undo that. The reason why I was doing that because her face was so close to this color and in the same place that I couldn't put just a mask around it and say, hey, be done with it. Because her skin, due to the fact that the compression in this thing, there's a bit of greenish, and it's a part of the artifacting. You can see her shirt isn't just one smooth color. It has artifacts in it. Now, what could also help you with this, just come to my mind, is if you put a noise reduction filter in the beginning. I just used Neat Video. I'm going to put a link to the tutorial on how to use it, but also going to put a link to, I have how you say now, one of those links where you click on it and it helps the channel. I can also put that in there. But that would help to take out these color issues that you see. If you know how to use a noise filter, the Neat Video noise filter, you can remove these random colors. This is also considered to be artifacts / noise in the image. So then you would see, like here in her hair, you can see some reds and some greens. So that one made it more challenging. And I'm going to come back to the point is the reason I'm choosing these difficult pieces of footage so that in the real world, when you have a problem, you can fix it. Because all like here in her nose just had purple, and that's just artifacts from the compression. So in that way, I had to go through and solve that problem. And I think that's very important when you're color grading, that you need to understand how you can use the tools to solve issues and not just make pretty images. So like that is how I fix that. But let me know in the comments if you want me to go through and just really sit down and go through it and show you how it's done piece by piece. But I think you get the gist of it. So with that done, let's go back now to the previous version. Let's turn this off. This is the version we are now. So we are here. So let me do this. I brought back the skin because I wanted her skin. As I said, I like when I'm color grading that skin doesn't look weird, because we did desat the environment, but we need her skin still to look, representable. So if I say, hey, down here looks a bit too sat, I can come across here. Let's see here, going to here. Oh, I went and I was messing with the saturation over here because then I can be more precise, because here was just a general saturate desat, but I was like, if I can see this here, then I can just bring back the saturation. If you look at her back down here, let me zoom in. You see now it's a better desat in that area. So anyway, twist and turn it, there is a mask over it from the masking tool. The magic mask tool has that. So all my desat or saturation is going to happen there. But when I come in here, then I'm targeting specifically the colors, looking at them. What I did is I compressed the colors. I pulled them together even more than they were, so that we don't end up with large ranges of that quote unquote skin color, and there was an artifact in it, so that helped to kind of bring everything together because it had some greens mixed in, it had some purple mixing, and with me pulling the purple more to red and pulling the green more to the red, I got a more uniform color. So then I can not only change the color that was there, but also choose where it goes to in terms of saturation. And I think with this saturation at this level, because her skin had get desaturated from the scene we had created, like I told you, I like to just work on the environment, make it look the way I want to, and then go back and fix the skin. So you can see the skin is now in a nice way. So when we pull out, and because it's down and lower back, I don't want that to be competing with her face. So her face is slightly more saturated, but it looks cleaner now. So if I go here and I click this, you can see her face was basically gray from us, desaturating the scene. So, and I did sort similar thing, but I used the chroma warp instead of using this. I used the chroma warp instead, and I moved the color that was in the screen by just clicking it and moving it around until I get it into a place where visually was good for me. So with that skin, it was more about not so much as moving the color, but saturating it first to get it in the right place, and then shift the color to a certain place, because there was no color there. Her skin was almost, you can say, gray. So that has been solved. So now what I want to do with you is move on to, I think, what to be the last part of all of this. And now this is just adding texture, adding the vibe of the shot. So let's see here what we can pull. Let's look for the tilt shift blur. Let me do it a little different. Put it here. So the shift tilt blur, I'm going to use first the built-in tool from Resolve itself. So what it does is it gives you a tilt shift is the effect where you see quite often, like when people shooting from the top of a building, they're shooting at something. The lens is tilted like back in the day where they would disconnect the lens from the camera and they would tilt it slightly forward so that you would end up with, like, the top part would have a different depth of field than the bottom, and that then creates a look of miniature. You've seen it many times when they shoot top of a building and they're shooting down in effect and people moving in fast motion, they look like they're little miniatures running around. That effect comes from the lens not being completely perpendicular to the sensor. So this is emulating that. So what I want to do is I want to have this blurring effect but out on the edges. As you can see, it already done create a vibe. Just adding it creates a mood. You can see up here it has some blurring, but I don't want it to hit her. And so the way that I'm gonna do that is by pushing in let me create it here for you. Put this here, put it in the middle there, and then widen it out and then push it out. So that is going to say, I want this in focus. To make that happen, you have to pour this into, into here. And then go to custom on top of the lens tool. So just for clarity, we have our power window and not pushing it into the alpha, but pushing it into the second input. We go to custom, we say second RGB input. So now it is giving you almost what we want, but to get to there, we have to sweep this focus down until we see it there. So now we have only her in focus. Now here's what we are going to do. We are also going to adjust this to the point where we like, yeah, I'm comfortable with that. I want it more out on the edges, so it doesn't be too much in your face. Let's zoom into this. So you can see it's here out on the edges instead of very tightly in, you see? And then what we do is we play with the blur strength, that it looks more natural than an effect, you see? Look at the water and look at the trees, and we just turn it on and off. A slight. So let's up it a little more. Yeah. So now we have this look of, I haven't tracked it as yet, but you can see it has this effect on the side. So let's go on and off. That adds to that dark mood vibe, and it focuses the eye into the center. It's subtle, but it's present. So in that way, we can have, let me see where it, if that's good. So basically we could leave it where it is. We don't even need to track it because I've made it so large out on the edge. And then more and more is revealed in focus as we move back. So that's one way of doing it. Now, let's amp it up. So I have Sapphire plugin. It's a high-end plugin. Quite often it is used, this plugin, with like many ads, like almost every ad you see in the Super Bowl uses this package of plugins for effects. So let me just add a corrector. And let me add this. Let me take this out. Let me see here. Take that out. And then we add this in. And now I am going to look for, oh, let me do something else for you. This is kind of experimental. I'm also going to use, do I use this one? Yeah. Okay. So I'm going to use free lens. Free lens is the same effect like that one, what we did up here with the tilt shift blur, but it has a lot more, let's say, settings you can do, because what this is emulating is exactly the effect of you having disconnected the lens from the camera body and moving it in front of the camera so that it creates like light hitting the lens. Now that's now loose, making one side more glary than the other. This is the X, this is the Y. And let me see here. Let's see, defocus width. So you can see on the edges there, we are having the same type of effect. To see it better, I think we like this, and then we play with the defocus width. Let me get this a bit back. And let us, let me see here. Here, turn that off. Okay, so let me just, I haven't used this one as much, but what it does, it has the same type of effects that we are there messing with right now in the tilt and focus. But this one has all types of, effects in it, and you can animate everything. I think to use a plugin like this, if you want to animate it, it's better to put it inside of Fusion, because then you get a full-on a keyframe editor. Because in here you don't really get a keyframe editor. I would advise anyone to use this. This isn't really a good keyframe editor. You basically can't do anything in there. You can't set timings properly, nothing. So yeah, just to show you that there are plugins in the Sapphire set. I think I'm gonna see if I could have a affiliate link also in the description for you. Let's see, let's go to, you see, there is all kinds of, and then that creates also a vibe inside of the footage. So this is really setting the mood. Let me go back up here and change this to get its glare a bit off. Yep. Okay. So this has its own, like you can see, it's warping things there because we changed the, let me see here, was it this one? No, let's go down. We change. There's so many settings. we changed, oh, it was up, the distance. So yeah, that's one way. Let's not use that one. Let's use the rack defocus. And once again, oh, pipe it in. Let me see if it goes into there. And let me see. Let's double check which one has to do the same kind of, where do we want the, let me see, where do we want the focus to be? Let's look for that. Let's first go up here and look at the power window. Okay, let's go to here and look down, focus width, and come into here. Let's first try it like this, then we push this into here, and then we go over into here and we do that. Oh, that, no, this one. Yeah. Then we reverse that. So now it's only having the effect on the outside, as you can see. And let's turn it on and off. You see? And we can say we want a little less. And we can say the shape. But this is so specific. Let me see here. If that, yeah. So when you really see this come into play is if you have a shot with lights, because now you can mess with the bokeh. All these settings here, does affect the way that the bokeh shows up in your shot, which is just amazing. So you can do a lot of playing with these settings to get to there. But basically, I was just showing you there's a built-in effects that helps you to set that kind of blurring on the edges. But then they also have in the Sapphire plugin a rack defocus, and that's more based on a lens than anything else. So yeah, that's good. So we have this now. Now I want to do one more thing. What I want to do now is I want to set a chroma warp, or let me say a chroma distort. So if we look at the edges here, first I'm going to set in, it's going to affect the entire image. You see it added a little chroma warping there. And we can tell it we only want it to happen. Let's go back here. We only want it to happen in the, show it here, power window. We only want it to happen outside of that power window. So what we do, we feed it the alpha. So now as it comes in, we can see this slight chroma warping, but it never touches her in any way, because let's go here and let's see how it comes in. Let's look at the highlight. So you see it's only happening on the outside. So we can, if we were going to flip it, then it would happen on the inside. And that would be, you can see it isn't here at the moment. So we do want it on the outside where it just hitting the bar. And that just adds just one more layer to the dark mode. It's subtle, but it's there. So we can always, you can see, off, on, off, on. And you can see it also happening up here in the sky and on the edges a little bit. So it just adds to the mood. You can see it on the top of the trees. And yeah, this has been, let's say, a pretty long one, but as you can see, you can do some really crazy things to create that mode. So what I would say, we came from here, we came from this, and we got to this. And I think that's quite a huge jump in difference. We started with this, and we ended with that. So yeah, this was a tutorial on creating a moody dark tone look.